Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Please be seated. I do hope you've enjoyed this discussion we've had on the Beatitudes. I'm finding it so enriching. And for this fourth Beatitude, our talk title is The Beatitudes, Step into Right Thinking. Now these principles that were so masterfully laid down by our master teacher, Jesus. Now, this is a culmination of rich, foundational Christian theology that we do adopt for ourselves. We are a Christian community. And as we go for this, let's start again by turning to the Bible. Now, we're looking at the New Revised Standard Version, and this is expressed this way, Matthew 5:6. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. This is quite easy for us to actually get a powerful meaning to it. But some of us might have a little challenge with that word righteousness, because in our society, righteousness sometimes has a harsh connotation, or I'm right. And righteousness we can easily translate as right thinking, being in right thinking. And we know we're in right thinking when our life is in flow. And so if we read this as, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for right thinking, for they will be filled. This is where we're going to go with this. And it's important that we choose to step into right thinking. Also, in this ongoing series, I've used this wisdom from Jennifer Kennedy Dean. Now, Greek was the first language that the Bible was translated into from Aramaic. And the word translated as hunger and thirst means to avidly desire something as necessary to life. And we can certainly see that food and drink are very necessary for our life. It sustains us. It's so vital that if we don't have food and drink, we're not going to live very long. And if we can have the same focus, desire, yearning for right thinking as we do for food and drink, what changes are going to come forth for us? What's going to happen to our life? This is why we're talking about this, and this is why this teaching by Jesus is so fundamental to our journey. It's very exciting. Our own Reverend Tony Bain wrote a fabulous book called Soul Mastery, and in it she talks about these Beatitudes, and she identifies that hunger and thirst, those who have released duality thinking, who seek source in all experiences, who ask and long for and live from an unquenchable desire for expanded awareness of right thinking. Now, this is, when I was thinking about this, it reminded me of the wonderful recovery programs that exist based on the 12 steps. And how people are brought to that program not whimsically. Not, oh, I think I'll step into this. It happens because there's a moment where my recovery, my owning of self is so important to me. I'm in a life or death situation. And then I must follow those 12 steps, which is one of the spiritual programs alive in the world today. And using those steps, we realize that we can come from a place of absolute powerlessness to hope, to possibility, to change of behavior. And it doesn't matter if it's alcoholism or debting or loving or drugs or pick any ism. And we all have those various journeys in us. And none of us have all of them, thank goodness. But this is when we live in a world of duality, when we've lost control because we're being guided by some compulsive behavior, we can't wake up until we can step into right thinking. Keep it simple. Right now. And from that now moment, we can take our steps towards healing, towards acceptance, towards wholeness. And this happens in all levels of our life, not just the 12-step program. And it's all based on us accepting and turning within to the one that's always with us. Now, continue journeying this. Emmett Fox wrote an incredibly great book called Sermon on the Mount. And we've been using this as we've discussing these Beatitudes. And here he says, what you think in your mind, you will produce in your experience. That's related to that principle that what we think, what we believe creates our experience. As within, so without. First in thought and then in form. You cannot think one thing and produce another. It's nature. It's the law of nature. If you plant an avocado, you're not going to get a turnip. It's not going to happen. You plant a peach, you get a peach. You plant a carrot, you're going to get a carrot. Any seed thought we plant is going to produce after that thought. For instance, if you want health, you must first think health. He goes on to say, remember, thinking health does not mean merely thinking healthy body, as important as that is. But it also includes thinking peace and contentment and goodwill to all. I find this a great explanation of right thinking. That, for instance, if we're thinking about health, it's not just thinking healthy body, it's thinking I'm at peace. I have satisfaction. I have abundance. And then we can extend that feeling of health and peace and wholeness to our family, to our community, to our township, to our nation, to the world, to the entire universe. Because a thought, a prayer, can extend all the way to the farthest reaches of the universe, right from where we sit or stand. So right thinking is a whole thinking, knowing that our health or our prosperity or our love or whatever we're praying for that we want for ourselves, our recovery is going to come from a right thinking of seeing it not just from the perspective of money to pay my rent, but I live in absolute abundance. And everywhere around me is God. Everywhere around me is peace. Everywhere around me is guidance and help and support. Because we're never alone. Ever, ever, ever alone. And so if we're going to step into right thinking, we need to come to a place where we're open to praying for what we want, along with what supports receiving that want, what supports that for everyone. You can see how that kind of thinking is very holistic, yes? And then we conclude this talk by looking at the wisdom of Elizabeth Sand Turner. Now, she was a unity person with great wisdom, and she took on translating a metaphysical interpretation of the entire Bible and published it in 3 volumes. And this comes from one of those. When our desire to express the Christ is more powerful than our desire for personal gain or for personal power, we are hungering and thirsting for righteousness. Our desire shall be satisfied by divine love and divine life. This is the crux of this teaching. That when we can truly step into our Christ consciousness, when we can awaken to the awareness that, wow, I am one with God, and that Christ consciousness is within every cell of my being, giving me that knowing. And then from that knowing, I can step into guidance and right thinking for my health, for my wholeness, for all that I do. And we can see how this dovetails with the other Beatitudes by enriching our lives with something we can apply to what we're doing today, so that we can let go of that dualistic thought of anything out there has any cause on what I experience. It all happens from what I think and what I believe. And when I can accept that oneness with God in my being, and then look out and see others and know that that is within them, it's easy to love everyone that we experience in divine love, in unconditional love. And we can take it because there's no place where God is not. And if it's in us, it's in you. And there's no doubt about it. And it changes our experience. Because when we can recognize that Godness in the Godlets all around us, where are we? We're in a space of acceptance, of joy, of satisfaction, of contentment that comes from being a spiritual being, having a human experience, and our ever-increasing awareness of our oneness with God and each other. Thank you.
Step out on the water, release your faith. Every step is stronger. Step out on the water.